I need to show you something that most financial channels are not touching right now, and it is about to affect every single person who has money in an index fund. Index funds were supposed to be the safe, boring, diversified choice. Buy the whole market. Do not try to pick winners. Just own everything and let time do the work. That logic is still sound. But there is a specific problem happening right now that changes the math. And if you are in a standard S&P 500 index fund, you are already exposed to it. Here is the problem. The S&P 500 is supposed to give you exposure to 500 of the largest American companies. Sounds diversified, right? Except it is not weighted equally. The index is weighted by market cap. The bigger the company, the bigger its share of your investment. And right now, the top 10 companies in the S&P 500 make up roughly 35% of the entire index. You are not invested in 500 companies equally. You are primarily betting on 10, and it is about to get significantly more concentrated. SpaceX is preparing to go public. OpenAI is preparing to go public. Both companies have private valuations in the hundreds of billions. The moment those companies join the S&P 500, they will immediately become some of the largest components of the index. Your passive index fund will automatically buy them on your behalf. You will not get a vote. You will not get a choice. One day your S&P fund will quietly own a piece of SpaceX and OpenAI, priced at whatever valuation the market assigns on their first day of trading. Now here is why that matters. When a massive private company like this goes public, it is typically not a gift to retail investors. It is exit liquidity for the early investors who have been holding since the company was worth almost nothing. The insiders get out. The index funds get in. And since every passive fund is forced to buy at whatever price the market sets, there is no price discipline whatsoever. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is how index fund mechanics work. And it happened with Tesla, with Meta, with Nvidia. Every time a mega cap joins the index at peak valuation, passive investors absorb the downside risk. So what do you actually do about this? Because here is what nobody tells you. You have more options than you think, and none of them require you to become a stock picker or a day trader. I am going to walk you through 4 specific moves. Each one is something you can actually do this week through any major brokerage. No financial advisor required. Move 1. Equal weight index funds. This is the simplest fix, and it is one most people have never heard of. Instead of weighting companies by market cap, an equal weight fund gives every single company in the index the same percentage. Apple gets the same weight as company number 472. The most popular version is RSP. That is the Invesco S&P 500 Equal Weight ETF. It holds the same 500 companies as a standard S&P fund, just without the concentration risk at the top. Historically, equal weight has outperformed cap weight over long periods. The trade-off is more volatility in the short term, because you own more mid-sized companies relative to the giants. But you are no longer getting dragged down if SpaceX joins the index at a $2 trillion valuation and then immediately drops 30% in its first year as a public company. Move 2. X-Tech Index Funds. These are S&P 500 funds that simply exclude the technology sector, or at least the mega-cap tech companies. You still own financials, healthcare, energy, industrials, consumer staples, real estate. You get the diversification of the broad market without the AI bubble concentration risk. One practical way to do this is to pair a total market fund with an overweight in sectors you actually want more of. Buy more healthcare. Buy more financials. Let the tech weighting naturally shrink as a proportion of your total portfolio. This is not complicated. It is literally just buying 2 or 3 ETFs instead of one, and deciding which sectors you want to tilt toward. Move 3. International diversification. This is the one most Americans resist, and I understand why. The US market has outperformed international markets for over a decade. But here is what that decade of outperformance was partly built on. Cheap debt, zero interest rates, and a massive flood of global capital flowing into US tech stocks, because there was nowhere else to put it. Those conditions are changing. Japan is raising rates for the first time in 17 years. Capital that used to flow into US tech is flowing back to Tokyo. European valuations are significantly cheaper than US valuations right now. A 15 to 20% international allocation changes your risk profile meaningfully. The simplest way to do it is VXUS from Vanguard. Total international stock market, thousands of companies, zero overlap with US index funds. This is not a bet against America. It is acknowledging that the US makes up about 60% of global market cap, but only 4% of the world's population. At some point, valuation reversion happens. Move 4. Dividend-Focused ETFs. These are funds that specifically hold companies with strong, consistent dividend payment histories. Think about what kind of company consistently pays and grows a dividend over decades. It is not a pre-revenue AI startup. It is not a company trading at 100 times earnings on pure future expectations. Dividend growers tend to be older, cash-generating businesses with real earnings. They are exactly the type of company that gets crowded out of a cap-weighted index when AI hype drives valuations to the stratosphere. Two solid options here. VIG from Vanguard tracks the Dividend Appreciation Index. SCHD from Schwab is the other one most people point to. Both have strong long-term track records. Both are available commission-free at any major brokerage. Now I want to be clear about something. I am not telling you to abandon your S&P 500 fund. For most people, it is still the core of a solid long-term portfolio. What I am saying is that owning only the S&P 500 right now means your entire passive portfolio is more concentrated in a handful of tech and AI companies than at any other point in modern market history. And when SpaceX and OpenAI get added to that index, the concentration gets worse, not better. So the smart move is not to panic and sell everything. The smart move is to deliberately add diversity that the index itself cannot give you right now. Let me put the 4 moves together quickly. Equal weight with RSP to kill the concentration at the top. Sector ETFs to tilt away from tech if you want. VXUS for international exposure. VIG or SCHD for dividend quality. None of these require you to pick individual stocks. None of them require a financial advisor. All of them are available at Fidelity, Schwab, or Vanguard right now. I also want to cover one thing people get wrong when they think about this problem. They think the answer is to go to cash, to wait on the sidelines until the bubble pops and then buy back in. That is market timing, and market timing is the most reliable way to underperform a simple index fund over 10 years. Even professional fund managers cannot do it consistently. The moves I described are not market timing. They are diversification. There is a massive difference. Diversification does not require you to know when the market will crash. It just requires you to not have all your eggs in one very expensive basket. Here is the timeline to keep in mind. SpaceX has been rumored for a public listing for years. OpenAI recently restructured to allow public market investment. Neither has set a date, but both are in the pipeline. The time to think about your portfolio positioning is before those IPOs happen, not after. Once they are in the index, the passive funds have already bought. The exit liquidity has already been provided. The index fund was one of the greatest financial innovations ever created. I genuinely believe that. But every tool has blind spots. And right now the blind spot is concentration risk in a way that most passive investors are completely unaware of. You do not have to overhaul your entire portfolio. You just have to know the problem exists and decide how much of it you are comfortable with. That decision belongs to you, not to the index. If this is the kind of thing you want to know before it becomes mainstream news, subscribe. This is the channel for people who want to understand what is actually happening to their money, not just what feels good to hear.